Welcome back. In the last video, we talked about how to pragmatically execute with design tools. In this video, we will talk about how you can effectively ideate and come up with solutions. Some of the common tasks that you would see when you join a company would be the common thing is, hey, can you come up with a better way to do this work? Or can you say, how is my product unique in the market? Can you figure out ways to make it unique? The other way that you might hear in terms of your company is your boss might say, hey, can you solve this problem? Or might say, hey, we are not getting enough people who are signing up. Can you solve that problem? Or we might have, not enough people are discovering a particular feature. So how would you solve that problem? The common thread between all of these different kinds of asks is your ability to ideate and come up with different solutions. Traditionally, you would have been taught to do a competitor analysis, come up with a set of features that would work, that would separate you, talk to a number of users or your peers to come up with ideas, and finally you put something together and pitch your idea. Practically speaking, when you're in the work environment, most people struggle to come up with ideas. The second aspect is most people struggle to come up with good ideas. And finally, they struggle to synthesize and finalize and come up with the best solution possible. Let's take an example of a simple login experience. What would a login experience look like? Traditionally, we would think, well, if you're logging in, you would need some screen where you would type in your user ID and password, and then you would go into your homepage. Once you log in, you're going to the homepage. But really, how many other ways can you do it? Here is a subset of some of the most interesting examples that we saw in the wild. Now, one example is you have a user ID and password. But when you think about a WhatsApp kind of an experience, you really don't have a password. You just type in your telephone number and the login is automatic. Or you might think about logging in with your Google and Facebook credentials. The other aspect is maybe you get a one-time password that you use to log in. So in essence, there are many ways you can go down the login experience without necessarily using the traditional user ID and password approach. So for example, if you look at the LinkedIn format where people would have to enter a user ID and a password, it's usually used in websites that tend to be more secure. Now, the other way of looking at it is if you want to look at a WhatsApp login process where you simply enter your telephone number, you get a one-time password, and the software automatically authenticates you and lets you in. This kind of a login experience is better when you want speed and convenience. The third kind of authentication experience is where you have a global login experience, where you might log in with your Twitter credentials or your Facebook credentials or your Google credentials. And the idea here is you are accessing a website that you do not regularly go to, in which case there is an overhead with remembering a user ID and password. So this kind of a login might be better for websites where people would log in occasionally. Now, another way might be to have a one-time password be sent to you. And this might be a way, this kind of a login might be better when you're talking about extremely high security experiences. Maybe you want to log into your banking experience, or maybe you're trying to send money somewhere. So this kind of two-factor authentication process is better suited for high security and high cost of failure experiences. And there are many more ways to do the login, but I just want you to understand that even a simple experience like login has many different ways of doing it, especially when you take into consideration the context in which you're going to use that approach. Traditionally, when you're taught ideation, you're probably familiar with techniques such as brainstorming or 6-ups or some other form or variation of that. You're probably also taught to go conduct interviews or sit down and talk to your stakeholders to come up with a set of ideas. But when you look at it from a pragmatic perspective, you need to learn to understand the context in which you're trying to create the solution. You should also understand how you would define success, what metrics would be important for defining the success. Then the next step of that is you need to learn how to step out of your constraints, because that is what allows you to be truly creative. And finally, You need to learn how to think about all the different solutions, identify the best parts of the solutions that you have selected, and bring them together to create a best of breed final idea. Now that you understand what is required for pragmatic ideation, the next step, the next set of tasks that you need to learn how to execute on is how do you create transactional experiences. These are experiences which pretty much, if you are designing any application for the web or mobile or wherever, you have to have this knowledge.